Let's go.
Hey, Martin, how you doing today?
I am doing awesome. What about you, Michael?
I am super duper.
Super duper.
Yeah.
Let's welcome our French guest today.
Another French guest?
Another French guest.
Okay.
Salut Damien, comment vas-tu?
Bonjour. Martin, ça va bien et toi?
Wait
et
a
toi,
second.
Michael?
Et toi? Ça va bien. Et toi?
Ah, très
See,
bien.
I got it this time.
So we can do the podcast in French.
Yeah,
Let's not do that.
All
How
right.
come every one of our podcasts feels like it's going to be in French at some point?
Because we did tons of French jazz, that's why. Like,
Which are not only the smartest guests, but the most handsome.
yeah, for sure.
Are we all stupid for trying to start businesses and stuff? I don't know which one.
Oh, that's so great. So let's welcome our guest.
Sure.
Damien Kerneis, co-founder of Siam Car Deal. It's on the shirt. I like to say it's in the name. So it's easy to understand. Let's do this really quickly, though, Damien. Why don't you give our guests, our listeners, in English, a little bit of your background?
Yeah, so as I said, I started my company, Siam Car Deal, about 6 years ago.
Okay.
I've been in Thailand for 16 years now.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Wow.
Originally, my company sent me to work here,
Right.
a big French company. So I worked in the corporate world for about 10 years and then decided it was time to launch my own. And I started Siam Car Deal because I saw a gap on the market as to buying a new car and the experience around it.
Right.
And I think 6 years later, we're still here. So I think it was a good
probably the right-
assumption. It was a good assumption and it's still valid. So that's why we keep going.
That's awesome. Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about, there's this elephant in the room for everything that's happened in the past 2 years or so, right? And it's COVID. Can you talk about Siam Car Deal's growth pre-COVID, just so people understand where it was going at that time?
Yeah. So actually for us, it's quite interesting because COVID was kind of a good thing. As we are an online marketplace and we are fully digital, fully working online, we never had any physical business or things, right? We're doing lead generation, we're doing software.
Right.
So actually during COVID, there was two sides of the coin, right? One side was the market was down, dealers had to shut down because of lockdowns. So all the sales volume dropped. But on the other hand, what was left of the business needed to move online. No more motor show events, no more cars in the shopping malls because everything was closed. So we benefited in one way of getting the budgets switching online, and we were able to capture some of those budgets which we may have not in the past.
So this is something that I've been thinking about before you came in today, and that was exactly this point, that the necessity to digitize these businesses was obvious to you, but maybe not so obvious to the dealers back then. But bit by bit, you've been digitalizing little bits and pieces of the car business, starting with the new car business. Did you see it accelerate as COVID hit? In other words, was it easier for you to do sales and convince people to use your stuff?
Yes, I think it has shown the dealers and the brands in general that it was really a necessity to be more digital,
Right.
and to have a strategy that covered all the different channels, not only just their website, but also working with all third parties, platforms, content creators, like you guys, for example, things like that. So they definitely, what we see in the past few years, almost all of the brands have created this digital strategy department
Right.
within their company, which didn't exist before.
Okay.
And they have some guys who are there just trying to coordinate everyone to have a digital strategy along the whole chain, whether it's from marketing, from sales, from customer follow-up and deliveries, all this stuff. So it's a hard job, but they are definitely, we see just over the past couple of years, and during COVID, those guys got more power and more credibility because what they were doing suddenly was the only way that was available.
But it's a really good point, because I was talking to somebody in the insurance industry as well on my InsurTech show, and the woman who runs the digital business there said everybody's now part of that digital business, because they realize the same thing that you're saying, that particularly in COVID, and the more they digitalize the business, at the beginning it was just like, those are the tech people, and now it's like, bring those tech people over here because we can use their help, right? So they are gaining more power.
I'm really wondering, in terms of sales, during COVID, it goes up, it goes down for cars?
Yeah,
Or-
it's a good question. So 2020 and 2021, basically roughly the Thai market is about half of what it was pre-COVID in terms of new car sales.
Half.
I don't know the exact numbers for the used cars, but I know it's a bit less of a hit because a lot of people try to buy cheaper used cars as an alternative to not use public transportation. So the used car market has benefited a little bit more than the new car one because all the new cars are more expensive by nature.
And are you in the used car market as well?
Yeah, we're also starting to do a few things in the used car because I think it goes together, right? Like when someone buys a new car, they are going to often have an old car that they want to trade in or to resell. So you need to help the customer along the chain. As what I mentioned, there's a whole chain of buying and selling a car, and it all goes together. So a lot of the players, like famous guys like Carsome, Carro, even Cars24 now is coming in, right? So those guys all those companies are starting with one piece of the puzzle, let's say, because it's such a big market that you can't tackle everything at once. You need to I'm going to start with this and solve this problem, and then I'm going to expand along the chain. So ultimately, all those companies are trying to cover the whole ecosystem, but starting with one point. So we started with new cars.
Right.
That was our premise, that nobody was doing new cars and helping the new car buying process. Those guys started, we're going to help the used car process because nobody's helping people buying a used car. So.
Right, but so used cars is it's a very different market, I'm guessing, right? And one of the complexities of the new car market is that there's a dealer involved.
Correct.
Or a brand, right? But one of the two, if not both. Yeah. And the difference is, for a used car, I could literally call you and sell you my car with no dealer and no brand involved. So I feel like, now you could do it, right? There are used car dealers for sure. But I had a car and I sold it to just another person.
Yeah, the vast majority of the transactions are going through dealers, though, even for used cars.
I don't know that. Okay.
The C2C business, it's not that big. Maybe it's 30% or 25 or 30% of the whole used car sales are just C2C.
Okay.
Because often it's very hard and long to find a buyer for your car because now there's so much choice online, and there's so many listings and so many ways you can check cars. So it's really hard as an individual, when it's not your job to do marketing for your car. How do you find someone to buy it? Okay, maybe you have a friend and that works, but most of the time people don't have time for that, so they would just sell it to a dealer.
That's very interesting what you said, because in France we have this website called Le Bon Coin, right? Yep. And like most of the used car that goes through that. Like people want to sell like a car or an apartment or something. That's the first.
So it's like Craigslist.
Yeah, it's like Kaidi, the equivalent of Kaidi in Thailand, and actually Kaidi has a lot of cars as well. Yeah. But actually a lot of dealers are also on Kaidi because dealers are very prominent in Thailand, and they buy and sell the cars because they can act faster than individuals. Mm-hmm. Often it's hard. So one of the issues for the C2C business, like selling to another consumer, is how do you trust that the car is in good condition? That the odometer has not been tampered with, which most of the cars in Southeast Asia are.
Really?
And did the car have an accident? And like a lot of the pieces are not original, they've been replaced.
Right.
So there's this issue of trust in the market that makes it hard to sell from consumer to consumer. In France or in mature market, you kind of protected by the law as well. If you find a problem, you can always go to the court. But here, it's not much you can do. So that's what like Carsome and Carro, that's exactly what they're trying to address. So they're basically buying cars, reconditioning them, doing this 100, I don't know how many points of inspection, and then reselling you with a warranty, like a 1-year warranty.
So they're taking inventory on?
Yes, correct. Now this is what they're doing. They're becoming like a dealer 4.0, where they buy all the cars, recondition them, and sell them, because they are like very efficient at sourcing cars and very efficient at digital marketing compared to traditional dealers who rely still on walk-in and listing platforms and things like that.
So they must have a massive data operation as well.
Yes, correct.
So are they involved in the transaction too? So they must be, right? So they buy the car, they do the inspection.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
And they're like a full dealer, but for every brand.
Exactly.
So they take all the data and then they analyze what the price should be. Do they do dynamic pricing as well?
I think it's just based on the time at the time that they're selling the car, they're going to look at all the different prices and set the price to maximize their profit. So they try to buy the best cars that will sell fast at the lowest price and sell them at the highest price. So.
Is Grab also now a buyer of cars? The reason why I ask is because when I use Grab Premium sometimes, it says, Toyota Camry, but it's used and super used, right? It's not that nice of a car. And it feels like Grab is either buying these cars, leasing these cars, and then renting them out to the drivers.
Yeah, it's probably through some leasing company. I'm not so familiar with their particular mechanics, but I would guess some leasing from leasing companies, and they would let drivers use them.
Can you put a number, and you can say no, because I obviously don't know this, but can you put a number on the size of the car market in Thailand?
Yeah, of course. New cars on a normal year, it's about 1 million new cars sold per year. 1 million
new cars sold per year.
And 2020 and 2021, we are at around 550, maybe 600 this year, 600,000. So it's like almost half of the normal size. And the used car market is a bit more. It's probably somewhere around 1.5 million cars a year.
So you're still talking about 2.5 million cars changing hands.
Yeah.
Wow, it's a gigantic market. I wonder what it is in dollar terms.
In Southeast Asia, it's about 8 million cars total. And just the value of the car is about $200 billion just in sales, not including insurance, financing, accessories, maintenance, all this stuff. So just buying and selling cars is $200 billion in Southeast Asia. So that's why we also chose to go after this industry. And that's why all these guys have this high valuation. Because you take, $1 billion valuation for Carro.
Nothing.
Actually, compared to the market, they have a good potential. So give you an example. They actually follow the Carvana model in the US.
Carvana.
So Carvana is like the pioneer in this type of model of buying inventory and reselling it online, and then they would deliver it to your house, right? So you're not constrained by geographic location where you need to go to a dealer that's next to you, so you don't travel 200 kilometers to check a car and then it's not good. So they will have all this inventory that's like inspected, certified, comes with a warranty. You can send it back within 7 days if you're not happy. So this kind of the trust that they're building, that you don't need to worry about any car. You can just buy it online because you don't need to test drive or check it because we've already done that for you. That's their offering. And I think it's a pretty good offering, and that's why they're getting a lot of money.
So this is like what LL Bean used to do in the United States for boots. And for shirts. I'm serious. You could buy it, and if you didn't like it, you could send it back. Now, they did it because it was clothing at any time. But even a car, if you buy it and you can send it back in 7 days, you should know pretty much about the car, like in the first couple of days.
Exactly.
You can hear the rattling or the tires aren't set or whatever it is. Yeah, you should know about it.
And probably they're not going to take a risk to sell you a bad car because that's just bad business for them, right? If they start to have people complaining. So they have these reconditioning centers where they really just make the car new again and just fix anything that needs fixing.
I'd be curious to understand. I don't know if you know, and I don't really care today, but I'd be curious to know what their capex is and what their margins are, right? Because buying a car is also really expensive. But I understand the markup in used cars is nice, but
a lot of cash for the inventory.
Right, that's why they've raised a ton of money.
Exactly. So the margins will depend on how good you are with data. Because you need to buy at the lowest price and sell it at the highest price. The risk is you're not sure to sell the car. So you can end up with, on your yard, you could have hundreds of cars that you can't sell. So that's the risk that they carry. But they think with the data, they buy cars that they will be able to sell.
Right. And this is happening a lot in the housing market in the United States as well. As a matter of fact, some of these big companies like this have decided that they want to be owners of homes.
Oh, yeah. So that the Zillow and...
well, Divvy is doing this, Zillow's doing this, and I think it was Red
and
something.
Then they all went... They couldn't sell them, and
they couldn't sell them,
right? Like,
but it's so hard for a house. First of all, because you can't move it anywhere, you can't deliver it to somebody. No. It's there, right? So a car you can take somewhere else. Yeah. Also, it's a factor more expensive than a car, right? So you're not going to lower the price to zero, and in most cases, people take out big loans like mortgages to buy them. So if the mortgage becomes an NPL and a non-performing loan, it just becomes a much more non-trivial transaction.
Exactly.
But also, like, the thing that happened with this big company that buy houses is that they created AI in the back end to kinda automatically buy the houses. The problem that they had is that the AI kinda made the market, because if the AI buys 80% of the houses in a single neighborhood, and it's the AI who choose the price, and you own 80% of the houses, then you kinda make the price yourself, right? So like this is what during COVID, like they just got the price so high because, like, of course the AI did not really know like what was
right. Didn't know COVID was going on.
Yeah, so like they end up like buying really tons of stuff. So does that kind of stuff also happen in the car industry? Like, do they have AI? Do they get like software like
Very
this?
Interesting transition in the US right now. A crazy thing is happening.
What's that?
A used car is more expensive than a new car. So if you buy a Toyota Camry new in the US, let's say, I'm just saying random price, $30,000.
Right.
A second-hand Toyota Camry from last year with 20,000 kilometers on the clock would be $35,000
Why,
on the market.
Is it just because there's more bidding going on?
No, the reason is now also another challenge from the industry on top of COVID is the shortage of microchips. So you may have heard that from Tesla, from phone manufacturers.
Understood.
It's very hard to procure.
So they're not making new cars.
No, they have problems to make cars because they're lacking the chips.
Got it.
And there's so much electronics in cars nowadays.
Sure.
So they're really struggling to actually make the car. So like I read that Tesla delivered cars without USB ports because they didn't have the components and they just wanted to keep shipping. So they went, sorry guys, no USB port on this batch. And they were like, you can plug your phone and stuff. Like, but they were like, yeah, okay, I don't know, maybe they gave a discount or something. But yeah, the challenge is that so now like Ford and others, they are opening facilities to make their own chips because they are too dependent on suppliers. So it's been a really big challenge. And nowadays, like the wait list to get components is like a year and a half. So if you order chips now, you get them in a year and a half.
But by that time, they'll be obsolete.
Yeah, and there's a problem like that, right? So that's made like production of new cars to be really low, really slow. And people needed cars, so they started to look at the used car, and it came up like, yeah, I need a car, and there's the new car is 6 months waiting list, and I need a car now, so make the used car price be higher than new car. It's crazy.
Just because it's valuable now.
But just, because people need cars, and there's no new cars available before the next 6 months, because they cannot produce them fast enough.
Which is interesting in the context that the Japanese, I think, a generation ago or 2 generations ago, right, introduced this idea of just-in-time inventory and having all the suppliers right around the manufacturing plant and just having great relationships with them. Yeah. But I guess the idea as well is that the rare metals and the other stuff you need to actually make those components is also broken on the supply chain. So even those suppliers can't get the stuff that they need to make the things to supply to the car makers.
And on top of these two, so microchip shortage, COVID, and you have a third one now.
What's that?
Is the cost of logistics of freight at the moment. So right now, there is a kind of a situation in the freight industry. I have worked in the freight for like 10 years before, right?
Right.
And during COVID, there was a couple of things that happened. One was the ship that was stuck in the Suez Canal. Everyone saw that, right?
Right.
And that created a lot of delays because other ships couldn't go, right? So created a lot of delays, backlogs at the ports. And that was just during COVID. And all the shipping lines were like, okay, we're going to reduce capacity because with COVID, nobody's consuming and all. But actually, a lot of goods, people were buying a lot more goods during COVID for their house and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And actually, the overall demand for all kind of stuff actually increased a lot during COVID.
Right.
And what happened is the shipping line never put back the capacity to carry the stuff. And what they did is just increase the prices based on there was a lot of demand. And same for planes, right? No tourists. So there was not a lot of planes to carry. Normally, most of the cargo stuff is carried by planes that carry people around.
Right.
So there was no more planes going. So the price of air freight, the price of sea freight got crazy. So to give you an idea, a container from, say, China to Europe or to the US, it was $2,000 2 years ago. Now it's $25,000.
For the same one.
For the same container. So you can imagine now if you want to ship components or stuff like that,
or toys or anything.
It's $25,000 per container.
Just because there is less and the demand.
Just because the capacity is less and they don't put more boats, so they can dictate the price. And actually, to give you a start, I just read that a couple of days ago. The shipping line industry, so all the major shipping lines combined, this year are going to make $200 billion in profit, which probably 2 years ago they were making $1 billion, altogether.
Oh, really?
So this 200 billion is more than Facebook, Apple, Netflix, and Google combined, and Microsoft combined. So who needs tech now? You just invest in boats, and then you make more money than tech. No, so that's crazy situation. I mean, not a lot of people know that because it hasn't impacted people yet, but it will definitely at some point. Now, like the manufacturers are bearing this cost, but at some point it will be passed over to the consumers, right? So I expect if that doesn't change quickly, there will be a lot of price increase and inflation because of that.
So there's a big worry globally about inflation.
And it's just greed because there's no reason to keep prices that high. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
So it's 90% greed, yeah? 10% is because, as you said, if it's an airplane, normally there are people on it, so they can subsidize some of the cost of the cargo with the people and vice versa.
You can just put more planes, right? Like the planes are here, so you can just put more planes because there's more demand. That's how it works usually.
But there's no reason why profits go up 200 times.
I would understand if the price is double. And they enjoy a double profit. That's fine, But like 10 times, 20 times more.
100 times, 200 times, it's wrong. And the other thing too is that the U.S., through some of these stimulus packages that they've given out to a couple of 100 million people, is also giving people money that they might not have had otherwise.
Yeah, no, it's true.
And that's going to increase inflation, as well.
Yeah,
but you're right.
A lot of money in the stock market and all of that rest. So
that's one of the reasons why the stock market's so high. We could spend days talking about that, right?
That's for another podcast.
But actually, I guess there's a direct link with the car market, because like most of people finance their car and they don't buy cash, right? So like they need to get loans, and this directly impacts like what's going on the stock market, or at least with the bank, right? And maybe that's what these guys are doing, like the dealers, what you say, like when they buy the cars, they like make it look great and warranty and all of that. Maybe they had the financing part. Maybe they had
that's exactly their plan. They do everything basically. So they don't work with a bank. A traditional dealer would have a partnership with the banks, like Krungsri or Thanachart in Thailand. And then when they have a customer buying a car, can you provide a loan to them and I get a commission, right? They were same for the insurance. They would call Rujai or whatever insurance. Say, hey, can you sell insurance? And I take my 2,000 baht commission on that. What they did is they said, no, we're going to do everything in-house. And they're buying or creating their own insurance broker or their own insurance company, actually, underwriter, right?
Yep.
And their own financing entity, and they're providing loans and insurance and taking all the margin basically with them.
I mean, the dealers used to do this as well. Sorry, the brands used to do this, right? Like Ford Motor Credit, FMCC, and GMAC and stuff used to do it as well.
In the used car business, because the new car is very different. Because as I said, so new car, they will be the brand, and they will have like kind of franchise dealers.
Yep.
And those dealers have to follow the instructions. And usually, I say all the manufacturers have their own financial company to do loans, and they would do probably around 50-60% of the loans for all the best customers. And then there's like this other
rest just go to a bank.
40% where like, no, we don't want to take a risk with these kind of customers. Then they give it to banks. So dealers have less leeway in new car. But in used car, you don't have this, because they say this is just, you buy a car, it's yours. You don't owe anything to anyone, to any brand.
Right.
So then you can do the financing and decide what are the terms. So that's the reason why they're focusing on those aspects.
Really interesting business model though, right? Because they're trying to replicate the new car business in the used car market.
Yeah, kind of like be a trusted brand that will sell all type of cars. And the interesting part is Carvana has been doing that for years. And even with COVID and all of that, their market share is less than 1%. And we're talking multi-billion-dollar revenue already, because the $200 billion is Southeast Asia market, but the US market is 30 million cars. Here is 8 million. So imagine the size. It's like $1 trillion roughly, something like that. So by doing a $5 billion business, you have only like 2% of the market, right? So that's the crazy part. That's why they can have all these valuations and all. Like in the UK, there's a company called Cazoo. They just started maybe 3 years ago, and they raised like few hundred millions before they even launched. Because they're like, we're gonna do this model and it works in the US.
Right.
And
we just need capital to do it.
The Carvana of the UK, and then they sponsored the Premier League, the football. Before they even launched, there was Cazoo on Manchester United shirts, really? And you're like, what's this brand? And then just like 1 year after they launched, they did a SPAC. They got acquired by a SPAC for like 40 billion or something, and just went listing, like just like that, just 2 years. From nothing to a 40 billion SPAC, right? So that there's definitely a lot of companies trying to emulate this. But of course, Southeast Asia has its own challenges, different countries, different regulations, different ways to work. I think the most difficult part for them is building their brand, because like nobody really knows Carsome or Carro as a seller of cars, right? People in tech like us would know. Okay, we know they raise money and stuff. But
your mother-in-law's never going to know.
No, and basically now they are doing these TV advertising spots.
Oh gosh,
Carsome has a very funny one, by the way. You can check it out. They're on TV. They just did the BTS coverage just a few days ago. So now,
can I understand the mentality here though with these ads that are on the road? The video ads that are on the road. Am I meant to be in my car driving and looking off to the right to look at that little thing on the BTS to see? It just feels like a weird way to advertise for me.
It's just for people who, it's
for
people
the passengers.
It's for people who are taking the BTS and don't own a car yet.
And don't own a car.
Would like are stuck inside, and they would like, I would be better in my car. I would be better in my car. No, but if you're inside the train with all these hundreds of people, right? Say, maybe
I need a car.
Yeah.
But I mean, even Rujai advertises on that spot on the BTS. I'm talking about downstairs on Skumvit Road, right? On those video things. Like, I'm driving my car. Why am I looking at that?
It's probably a package.
I know.
But that's funny.
It's just kind of funny. Did the government here, because you mentioned regulations, right? And I remember just before I arrived in Thailand at the end of 2011, and I think it was because of the floods. I don't know this for a fact. I don't remember. But the government built some incentives.
Before the floods, it was not related, but yes, they did put a
big
scheme for first-time car buyers, for eco cars only, because they pushed the production of eco cars on that time.
But it just increased the number of cars on the road dramatically, according to people that were there at the time. Yeah.
What it achieved is not a really good thing, is that it just borrowed demand from the next 2-3 years to sell on that year.
No, so it went like this and then right back down.
It was 1.4 million that year cars sold. And now we are at 500,000 10 years later. So you can imagine what it did to the market. It's not a good thing. It was a good thing on that year because a lot of people sold cars. And then a lot of them got flooded after. Well, after they bought it, they got flooded as well. So
net, not a great idea. But did they do anything after COVID as well?
There was no incentive whatsoever during this period. Actually, one reason is that there's a problem of production and with the other things. Also, I think they are preparing incentives for electric cars. So Thailand wants to be a hub of electric production, and another hub, right? They want to be the hub for everything,
right?
But I have to say,
it's already the hub for podcasting, by the way.
Right? that's just thanks to you.
Mostly French podcasting,
French-speaking podcast.
French. We should do one.
We should do the French podcast.
Are we back there now?
But basically. They are doing these incentives for EV, so electric vehicles, EV production
in EEC
in Thailand. So a lot of companies have signed up for it. Chinese companies are coming in, like Great Wall Motors have taken over the General Motors factory down in Rayong because General Motors pulled out of Thailand, so the Chevrolet brand exited. So the Chinese are taking.
They've been here for a long time.
Yes. And they couldn't get the volumes to where it would make sense to have these big factories because it was both for local and export.
Right.
But domestically, they were not selling enough, and there was not enough export market in the region.
So
I
haven't lived in the United States in 30 years, so I don't even know what's going on there. Right. I haven't been there since 2010. Do people buy Chevys in the U.S. today?
I think they still do. Yeah. Don't ask me why. I don't know. So
I don't know either because even when I saw Chevrolet,
Fords and Chevys, so I guess that's still.
But Ford exited the car market.
Yeah, I mean pickups like
they just make trucks.
I'm including in cars. I'm including. Pickups.
I understand. But think about it. Ford, which basically invented the car market in the United States, didn't invent the car, right? And also mass production in the U.S. exited the car market.
Yeah.
That's weird. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about the Chinese makers?
So
what are they doing?
I have a question for you. What's your perception of Chinese cars? Like would you buy one? What would be your concern?
So it's a really interesting question. And you told me before we started recording that you were at the motor show.
Yes.
At the VIP part of the motor show, just before it opens, right, to the general public. And 10 years ago, when I went to buy a car here, I went to the motor show to look at all the cars because when I lived in Japan, I had a relationship with a guy who sold cars, so it was easier for me to buy. And I went to the motor show and I was like, wait a second, there are Korean brands here, there are Chinese brands here, but my wife at the time didn't want to buy a non-Japanese car. And that was 10 years ago. I haven't purchased a car since then, but if you hadn't said great something What's
Great
it
Wall
called?
Motors. Yeah.
I wouldn't have known one Chinese brand. Now I know that they own. I'm going to get this wrong, but they own some of the old British brands,
Yeah,
right?
MG.
MG. Yeah. Don't they also own Jaguar? I can't remember, but it doesn't. Like that's all I know really about Chinese cars. I don't know any of the brand names.
Oh, they own Volvo as well now.
But to be fair, my impression would be the same level of quality as any other product that China makes, and every iPhone we buy, and every Apple computer that we buy, and probably this audio deck was made in China, and I have no problem buying it. Why do you ask that? Do you think that people have a misconception about the quality of Chinese cars? Because their progress in the electric car business has been insane, no?
Yes. So basically, in my view, even let's say 5 years ago, so China went through different phases, right, in the automotive development. So first, they brought the brands like in the 80s.
I remember.
To transfer the knowledge and learn how to
Ford was there. GM was there.
Volkswagen was the first one.
There. Yep.
The major one. That's why they did all the taxis in China.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Volkswagen, right? Santanas and later Passats, right? Because they were the first one to actually manufacture in China.
Right.
So they just took like 20 years to transfer the knowledge from the 80s to, let's say, year 2000. Then the first decade of the 2000 to 2010, it was copy time. Bad Chinese copies of cars, fake Range Rovers and fake things like they would just look like the real one, but just a low quality copy, right?
It was called Range River or something.
Yes, something like that. And then yeah.
That's a funny name.
You would turn and then the wheel would come up.
Not that bad.
But no, it was really bad quality on the time. Nobody would buy that, only in the Chinese market that people wanted to have.
Just a car, anything,
but
right?
From the last decade, they really started to learn because they learn fast. And it's valid in any product, right? It used to be that Chinese products were low quality, but you look at the Xiaomi stuff now, like
it's world class.
It's just.
I mean, Shenzhen is the electronics manufacturing center of the universe, right? So
you wouldn't think twice to buy. I got a Xiaomi phone, and it was half the price of any Samsung or anything. It worked as well. So
it's probably manufactured in the same factory. For God's sakes.
As well. So they've really come a long way, but people are still on this perception that things that China produces, the quality is not going to last and all. But I can tell you that the last 3-4 years, there are brands that are being built in China that are Tesla competitors, so as you mentioned, the electric cars.
Right.
And they started their own brands without any heritage. So those brands have not produced shitty cars in the past, which is the problem of some of the brands, like a Chery or things like that. You look at the old cars, they are like, very bad cars, and they're trying to change their image. But the new brands like Xpeng, for example, I don't know if you know this brand, Xpeng. It's listed in the US on the NASDAQ.
Do you know? You're a car guy. No idea.
The Tesla competitor. And right now they're selling only in China, but they are going to sell in Europe and the US very soon. And personally, I think their cars are better than Tesla. When you look at them, the technology is better, the design is better, everything is really super nice. And back to the motor show, there's a couple of Chinese brands, so Great Wall Motor has a Haval, Aura, they have different brands in their groups.
Right.
And the Haval cars, you go inside, it's 10 times better than in a Japanese car for the same price. So it's really now I start to see a switch to where Japanese cars have not leveled up. They've just been doing the same thing for the past 20 years, and they still work on their reliability and people know the
how does the inside of a car get leveled up? Is it just better leather, better ergonomic design, or just
design, tech as well, like the small tech things, lane assist, all this kind of stuff. The level of equipment now in a Chinese car is a lot better than in a Japanese car, and the price is lower because they can produce it more efficiently. And the Japanese just keep doing
the same
what
thing.
They know how to do, right? Because they're very slow at moving, whereas the Chinese have really improved a lot. So I think that it's going to be a real challenge for Japanese manufacturers in Southeast Asia to maintain their leadership position, because once people realize that the quality is much better and that right now the only reason people don't buy Chinese cars is because I don't know how long they're going to last.
Because it's a Chinese car.
I know my Japanese Toyota is going to last forever, right?
Right.
But when you look at it, when it's going to start to have actual data of people driving it for a long time and they're fine, I think it's going to change the perception and the electric shift. Like now they are kind of a leader in electric cars, and because I believe Thailand is going to switch to electric cars pretty quickly.
Right.
If the government doesn't, screw it up or, put the right incentives in place. I don't know if you saw, but PTT is going to manufacture electric cars. I don't know if you saw that
I
news.
did not see it.
So they've announced a joint venture with Foxconn. So Foxconn is the one who produces all the
Apple,
iPhones and
right.
all the Apple products.
On high precision, yeah.
So they are going to do a joint venture and produce electric cars in Thailand, because PTT knows like the oil is not going to last forever, right? So they're going all into electric.
And their gas fields are getting depleted as well in the Gulf of Thailand.
Exactly. And what they do is they are putting charging stations. Now in every PTT station, gas station, you have electric chargers. So they are building the infrastructure and then they build the cars. I don't know how that's going to look like. I'm waiting to see. That might not be, an oil company building a car is like, if Apple is already struggling to build one, you feel like might be difficult. But just what it brings is that there's this trend and these things happening that show that the electric car, the transition to electric is coming very faster than we think, I believe. And all these Chinese brands that come to Thailand are going to benefit from that, because the import tax also from China on electric car is 0. So they benefit from this free trade agreement, which European cars don't have at the moment.
Right.
So there's lots of discussions between brands and government and all of that. So the Chinese are really in a good position with all of this to expand their footprint in the region and in the electric cars.
And how does this impact what Siam Car Deal does? Because it seems to me that there's been sort of tectonic shifts in what's happening in the car market at scale, right? Whether it's the technology in the used car market and the organization with Carsome and you said Cars24 and Carro, which are all competing together kind of in the same market. And what does the scale and scope of your business look like in that context?
I think it's the beauty of our business is that if there's still something to sell, we are there to help selling it. Whoever is selling it, however they are selling it, and anyway, it's going to be online for most of the thing, right?
For sure,
everything is digital. So as long as we are online, we are just helping them. However is changing and however things are changing, we are here to help them to find customers for their cars or to help customers to sell their cars to one of the dealers. So we are in a good position by being an enabler. Whoever is selling it, if it's Carsome selling them or if it's a dealer needing help, we can help everyone. We are like neutral. We can help every brand. We can help new car. We can help used car. So I think this is the opportunity that we have here. And I think we are the only company, at least in Thailand, doing this, because Carsome, Carro, all these big guys, people will think, wow, the car market is saturated, right? Who's going to start and back an automotive company to go up against those giants? But the truth is, they're just becoming a dealer, right? So they're just one of the actors, but we are there around helping the whole market. So I think that's a good position to be in as well, because you can not only be restricted to a certain inventory that you have on hand, we can help the whole market. For
you, it's like almost getting another client, or at least a few more clients.
It's definitely one of our clients. Yes, we help them to find leads to sell cars. Definitely, we are one of the providers for them.
Yeah, sorry, my God.
Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, I just wanted to say that's an idea that we often talk about together, right? When you build a company, are you building the product or services, or are you building a platform?
Right.
And we always prefer building a platform just because of what you say, like because thanks to that, if the market change, if things evolve, then you can still be here because thanks to your platform, you connect with people, can work with much more people, brands. And then if just the players change, that's fine. Because your platform
just plug in a new player into the platform.
Just split in the new players, and then it just help you to stay over time. And that's kind of one of example that confirm what we like talking about
all the time.
The startup world, right?
Yeah, cool. All the time.
Sorry, Michael.
No. But if you do bring it back to an e-commerce angle, it's the perfect platform for this. And you're right, and I think you said it a little bit in passing. What Carsome's doing, what Cars24 is doing, and what Carro is doing is just becoming another dealer.
Yeah, essentially, yes. A very efficient one.
Right. But again, they own the inventory.
Yeah.
Right? Just like a regular used car dealer from 50 years ago. They own the inventory. They give the seller a price. They try to figure out what the margin is. And then they try to use that margin and sell it to somebody who wants to buy the car. What's the difference? Now, maybe they do it with more artificial intelligence. Maybe they do it with more data analytics. And maybe they do it without being location or neighborhood specific.
Yeah.
Right, we'll bring your car anywhere because who cares, right? They put it on the back of a truck and then they just drive it somewhere. But for them, if there's margin in it, they can do that anywhere. And for you, you're sitting there on the sidelines going, another dealer?
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Yeah. And the most likely to understand how we can help as well. So they're
because when you
more eager to use our service
because when you go knock on
traditional dealer.
Yeah, when you go knock on the door of a traditional dealer, they're like, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
But Carsome's like,
I need some leads. Yeah, I need to sell the cars.
I need to sell some cars.
No, that's definitely one way to see it.
Yeah. And is there anything else that you're building into your platform as well, or any other trends that you see in the car market? This conversation about Chinese cars, fascinating.
Yeah, I don't think it's changing any fundamentals. Whether it's an electric car, a gas-powered car, whatever. It's just selling a product right in the end and understanding how the consumers or what's the consumer journey to choose a car, to buy the car, what's the financing, the insurance. The customers just need to understand what are the options, and that's where we help. So it's not a fundamental shift into our business, but it's definitely a shift in what people are buying, what kind of cars, and how they're going to handle it, because you need the infrastructure and things like that. But yeah, it's a big shift, but at the same time, it's just doing the same things as 100 years ago, but in a more digital way and more efficient way, I would say, which is good because then consumer is a beneficiary of that.
And what do you think would be the time frame to see like a lot of Chinese electric cars in the street of Bangkok?
Look in the street today, and you might not notice, but already the Haval and all of that, they're really
So Haval's
starting.
a Chinese brand?
Yes.
I know. I heard you say that earlier.
Yeah. It belongs to Great Wall Motors, is one of their brands. And
right.
They just released the Haval Jolion, which is less than $1 million baht, and it's really nice. I just sat inside yesterday at the motor show.
What kind of car is
it? It's really nice.
Is it an SUV?
Yeah, it's a small SUV. Yeah,
it sounds like one. I don't know why Haval sounds like a small SUV. Less than $1 million baht.
Yeah. And when you compare to what you get for $1 million baht with some of the Japanese brands,
well, like a Mazda, it's
nice.
ridiculous. Yeah, because the Mazdas are like 1.3, 1.4.
Yeah, exactly. 4. It's cheaper, and then it looks nicer. I mean, Mazdas are nice, but if you look at a Toyota, it's always quite basic, right? Like design.
Yeah, and you have to remember this. You guys are you're definitely too young because you weren't even born when this stuff was happening. But when I was a kid. When I was a kid, the Japanese car manufacturers were considered like crappy manufacturers.
That's exactly. I had this discussion yesterday, and it's exactly the same that's happening to the Chinese.
That's my point, though. It's happening faster, right? Because technology is enabling it. When I was a kid, my dad bought a Datsun 510. Now, you don't even know what a Datsun is.
No idea.
But you do, because you're just around old enough to remember.
I don't remember, but
you're a car guy, right? So you understand what happened in the market. But that 510 was really a terrible car. Like, if you got hit in that thing, everybody was going to die. But Datsun made a strategic change, obviously, to build better cars, but they also changed their name. And I remember when they did it, it was really strange. And they changed it back to the corporate name. Datsun was a brand name. Nissan is the name of the company. Nippon Sangyo something.
They made Datsun in Thailand.
Well, all the car manufacturers, all the Japanese car manufacturers manufacture in Thailand and have for decades, yeah?
Yeah. They were. It was one of the first manufacturer to do Datsun. So if you go to the Nissan Motors office, they have the first one that was produced in the lobby.
That's down on Scumbit Road, right?
Yeah, at Siam, near Siam.
I've been there.
Siam at Siam Hotel.
I've been there. Yeah, I didn't realize that. I didn't
Yeah,
think about it when I was there.
It was one of our customers because they also own a lot of Nissan dealers, so we worked with them. And then it was really cool to see.
But so this is interesting because the people that own the Nissan manufacturing also own the dealerships, right? So it's kind of vertically integrated. Is that wrong?
No, it's just they own some dealerships as a business, but they were the partner for manufacturing, and they own a few dealerships, and others were independent. So
got it. Are there competitors for you?
The brands?
No.
For Siam, are they on the market? You mean?
No. Are there competitors for you? Like, has the competitive landscape changed in the last couple of years?
No, I don't think to what we do exactly. There's not really a platform that's similar to what we do in Thailand yet.
It's been 6 years though, right? I mean, you've been at this for a while.
Yeah. But funny enough, I thought about this business first, I think, in 2010. And I thought, well, there's no platform. And then in 2015, I changed my car and I look and there's still no platform. I said, in 5 years, nobody came up with a platform, so I'm going to do it. And then 6 years later, I do it. Nobody else is coming into this. It's a tough, tough business because you need to do a lot of education with brands and they work in very old school way. So the approach that the Carsome and Carro are doing is faster because then they can make decision. They want to buy this car and sell it. They can go really fast into building this. But for us, we are really following the brands and dependent on their decision and their choices. But once it's ongoing, then it's a long-term relationship where we help them more and more to.
And also, if they work with you once, right? It's going to be really difficult for them to sort of cancel that whole thing.
Right, exactly, because when we're part of their marketing mix and we deliver what we promise, that's what we see that they continue. So the most difficult part is just to start to get the trust because we also not an old established company. So there's when you work with corporates in Thailand and you start up, it's quite hard. I mean, we're a digital park that they're trying to help, but if you don't have the history, they'll be, I don't know if we should take that risk.
Which is kind of fair, right? I mean, because...
Yeah, I understand, but it's that's our job to educate them and just work with them. I mean, our sales cycle was like 2-3 years before we could start working. And we started discussions with Japanese guys, and then for 2-3 years you do calls and Zoom calls, and they're that's interesting, and nothing happens. And one day they call you and say, we have decided that we want to do this, but that's just what I was pitching them
3 years ago.
Decided that they want to do that. And it turns out we also provide this service. What a good match! That's unbelievable. Like, okay, let's get started.
What a killer idea on your part.
Yeah, we're gonna do it like this and like that. But that's just what we do. Like, so that's kind of how it happens with the Japanese. But let me say, when we talk to Chinese brands, you can feel that they have a different mindset. They're really like, let's. We're gonna do this on the market, and we want to learn from you. Whereas Japanese are more like, this is how we've done for 60 years, so we're gonna keep doing this. But the Chinese are like, we're just new to this market. Right. What do you recommend we do? And I'm like, okay, so you're gonna take all my advice and then do everything yourself. I know, but that's how they operate. But at least for a few years, you can benefit from being a partner and helping them. That's what happened with Volkswagen in China. They were the first manufacturer there, and the Chinese took all their technology and basically copied everything Volkswagen was doing, but they sold millions of taxis in the meantime until the Chinese could do their stuff, right? Which took like 20 years before they could have a decent automotive industry.
And let's be fair, it's not just Chinese business people that do this. Everywhere in the world, like even the chip technology originally that Intel started using came from other places. The Korean car manufacturers benefited from taking Japanese technology, going, let's join venture, not anymore kind of thing, right? And even the Japanese car companies took American technology to build their first set of Japanese cars because the United States was occupying Japan and just built stuff there. Yep. So this is just the way that part of the economic chain works. Yeah,
definitely. I have a question on the topic, like, and that different, still cars though, but like a lot of brands, like use racing for kind of getting advertising or awareness. Like for example, in Formula One, we have Mercedes, which is not normally like that. They are making cars for everyday people, right? So, but
everyday rich people,
Formula One. No, they are Mercedes. You can have a Mercedes, like
in Europe you can. Fair enough.
Of course, in Europe you can, but but they are still in Formula One, which is like something really intense, let's say, for racing. And also, like they launched Formula E for electric cars not so long ago. So I don't think there is any like Chinese brand like inside that. But do you think that's something that can
I think
happen?
Potentially, yes. I mean, building a Formula One, from what I understand, is very complicated, and that's why there's just a few manufacturers that have been doing it for a long time and that can do it. Yeah. But for sure, they might come in later when they get their tech ready. That could be a possibility.
Because like there was Honda until like this year, they are getting.
They're getting out.
Because like they were creating the engine for Red Bull, and now they get out. So I think this was the only Asian manufacturer in Formula One. And they're getting out. So now Red Bull get to build everything by themselves. And which I think leaves room for this. For
sure. It's very expensive. So it's more of a do you want to invest that much money into branding to be in Formula One? But I guess in the future it could probably happen.
But they have the Chinese Grand Prix. So that might be like a nice window for them, to showcase their own car, and plus as they're doing Formula E.
I think it's just about the time that they're gonna start to have nice cars to promote. I think now they're really focusing on the Chinese market because it's so big, right?
So they're
just like, okay, we're gonna have all these brands, but like the electric cars. It's interesting, like the brands that just started like a few years ago. So you have XPeng. Listed on the Nasdaq, you have NIO, also listed in the US. So all these companies are listed, and they're like, you can compare them with Tesla because they are producing just purely electric cars from scratch, right? Just starting a new brand, new design. It's all new. It's not some brand that said we're going to make electric cars now. It's just this company says we're going to start a new company making Teslas. And
what's that? What's the other car company the other company that makes trucks, electric trucks? Rivian, Yes.
Yeah. There's I mean, I'm not expert in the stock market. Maybe you know more, but that looks like a bit crazy in the stock prices for Tesla and Rivian. Like, Rivian is more valuable than all the other Volkswagen or Toyota. That's
Tesla's a different animal, right? Partially because its valuation is driven a lot by the worship of Elon Musk. They're also doing different things because he's trying to. First of all, he's self-promoting, right? So that seems to work really well. But they're also building insurance into the car and trying to become a finance company and a fintech, and just all the things that occur at Tesla are just different. But Rivian as well, very high valued, and all these Chinese car companies, if they list in the United States, let's see what happens politically, but their valuation should go high as well. We know that the car market is moving electric. It just is. Whether anybody wants it or not, it's going to happen. Most people do want it. But that's just going to happen.
It's a matter of, does the US government allows Chinese cars to be imported or to be made So this all depends. But in the future it will be interesting. So I mean, the markets are probably betting that Tesla is going to dominate cars because of everything else they do, software and all these kind of things.
Right.
I really don't know if that's gonna happen, but they have serious competition with all the Chinese brand for sure.
But you have to give Elon Musk credit for this. Without Tesla, there would be no Rivian. There would be none of these other electric car brands from scratch.
There was a few fails as well, like Nikola.
Yeah.
This brand, right? And then you have Lucid Motors. Like, there's quite a few other brands.
I wonder where they got the name for Nikola. It's such a weird name for a car company. Anyway, why don't we? This has been an awesome discussion. Why don't we wrap it up before we get into politics? Because I feel like we're going to go that way. It was great to have you here.
The future is electric.
The future is definitely electric. It was great to have you here, Damien Kerneis.
Thanks a lot for having me.
The founder of Siam Car Deal. This was awesome.
That was very great. Thank you very much.
C'était très très bien. Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Bye bye.
Cheers.